Hello, Trail Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. We have on the show today UFC world champion and highly successful MMA trainer. He has he's won many awards. He's in the UFC Hall of Fame, and he's gone on to train other athletes in the mixed martial art realm to go on and become amazingly successful and well accomplished UFC fighters as well. Pat Miletich is here on the show today. I'm excited for you to hear this because he struggled for many years, his entire childhood, with health issues, with lung issues, with mold, and he overcame them. And he figured out how to dial in his body. I love learning from elite athletes who've had to overcome something because, and I'm not expecting all of us, like, I don't want to become an elite athlete, but I want to be the healthiest I can be, right? So we can learn from those who are absolute excellence, who have figured out how to master something and create absolute excellence. And his body is a finely tuned machine, so he's figured out, and then he's gone on to help many other athletes do the same and reproduce the same results. And he's here today to share some of the things that has really made a difference, including this a very specific fulvic humic probiotic trace mineral supplement, and it's all natural from the earth. It's unique in many ways, and that's why it's so exciting, because it does things that like hugely increase oxygen in the cells and help mitochondrial function. And we're seeing some really, really great results. In the interview, I mentioned a link where you can go purchase this. You can go to learntruehealth.com/black gold. But before you do, I want to make sure that you get the discount, because I love saving money, and I want to save you money too. When you go to learntruehealth.com/gifts, learntruehealth.com/gifts, GIFTS, you have right there on the homepage there, learntruehealth.com/gifts, put in your name and email address, and you're going to be given a $10 discount, as well as a 30-minute free health coach strategy session, and also a fantastic ebook on the foundations of holistic health. So great gifts to get. But I definitely want to make sure that you get that extra $10 off. And of course, always use coupon code LTH on any of the websites, because every time I have a guest on, I ask them, hey, if you have the ability to on your website, if they're selling something, can they include a discount for the listener? And often I end up getting a great discount for you guys. So Learn True Health LTH is the discount code for most of the time when I have guests on. So always try that code, of course. But make sure you go to learntruehealth.com/gifts and put in your name and email address to get that $10 gift card. And then go to learntruehealth.com/black gold after listening to this episode if you want to try the fulvic humic supplement that has a natural probiotic from the earth. That's really fascinating. And well, just listen to the episode and you'll see what I'm talking about. Enjoy today's episode, and those links are going to be in the show notes of this podcast. So just go down to the description in the show notes wherever you're listening from, and you should be able to see those links there. And you could, of course, always jump into the Learn True Health Facebook group. We have over 5,000 listeners in that group, and it's a very active, wonderfully supportive, holistic community of listeners. And a lot of our guests also are there answering questions along with me. And you know what I love? I love learning from other listeners, and we're all just sharing together. So it's a wonderfully supportive community. If you do decide to try this humic fulvic probiotic supplement, definitely jump in the Learn True Health Facebook group and start a chat about it. Let's talk about your results. I'd love to hear from the other listeners as you guys add this to your healing journey. And if you have any questions for Pat, you can always jump in the Facebook group also, because I have his ear and I can always ask him for you guys. And that goes for any of our guests. If you ever have a question for them after an episode, you can jump into the Learn True Health Facebook group and ask. And I can always reach out to them if you have any, if anything in the episode was like, hey, what about this? Or now I'm struggling with this. What do you think they would say about that? I can always reach out to a guest. I can have them back on the show to answer your questions, or I can just ask for you and then answer in the Learn True Health Facebook group. The Learn True Health Facebook group is about supporting each other in our healing journey. So it's dynamic. It's always changing, and these wonderful questions are coming up, and then so many people are helping, and we can just pull from all the information If you have any questions after listening to an episode, for sure, jump in the Facebook group and ask. Let's keep supporting each other and learning from each other. Excellent. And thank you so much for sharing this podcast with those you care about, especially athletes that you know. I think they would appreciate learning from elite athletes and how to hone in their health, but also share this with anyone who has energy issues, who's tired or fatigued all the time and really wants to get on the other side of that and no longer struggle with energy, because this is going to be anything that has to do with mitochondrial health and healing is going to be something you're going to want to share with them. LearnTrueHealth.com/gifts first, and make sure you've put in your email address and name to get that $10 discount, a code, and then go to LearnTrueHealth.com/blackgold to try the fulvic humic probiotic supplement that Pat's going to talk about today, in addition to all the other stuff we talk about. Well, enjoy today's show and have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 491. I am so excited for today's guest. We have on the show Pat Miletich, who I'm just going to let you tell your story because I'm in awe of what you have created. Out of everything that you've been doing, there's a fulvic humic supplement that increases oxygen in the body and has had a tremendous effect on so many people's lives. And I'm really excited just to jump in and hear the story of how you figured this out. So Pat, welcome to the show, and just jump in and tell your story so that we can catch up and understand what you were doing in your life that made you want to find this and figure it out. And then we're going to jump into what it does for the body.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you having me, number one. And I guess the best way for me to explain it is, so I was a very sick kid all the way into my 20s. Even though I was a pretty good athlete, I just couldn't get to the very pinnacle of sports because I had such severely damaged respiratory system. And my mother's basement had leaks in the foundation, and every time it rained, there would be 3 inches of water down there, and that's where my bedroom was. So I lived in black mold for basically my entire life. And again, most people know me as former UFC champ, UFC Hall of Famer, and things like that. But it wasn't until I was about ready to turn professional in kickboxing, and I was giving it my best. I was training as hard as I could, and my wrestling matches in high school and college were me always never standing on the gas pedal because I was always worried about running out of gas. And running out of gas in a wrestling match can be kind of painful when you start getting thrown around because you can't breathe. But so a good friend of mine got me on some organic antioxidants, some capsules back in the day, many, many years ago, of a lot of really good antioxidants. And I went from sparring 3 to 4 rounds. I would spar a lot with really high-level professional boxers and to work on my boxing skills. And in 10 days, I went from sparring 3 to 4 rounds to about 10 rounds and feeling like I hadn't even worked out. And I felt like I went from breathing through a straw that was filled with mucus to breathing through a perfectly clear giant PVC tube. So it took the inflammation out of my respiratory system, and now all of a sudden I've got endurance for days. And I went, from struggling in my runs to running 16.5-minute 5Ks, got to where I was dunking a basketball. I'm only 5'10", bench pressing 375 pounds, and eventually winning a UFC world title, and held that for about 3.5 years. And then I was lucky enough, because of the organics that I was introduced to train, what do we put, 95 kids in televised careers and 12 world champions. And then all of a sudden I'm getting called by law enforcement and military units, and I'm training them all the way up to special forces in different branches of the military, and then a broadcasting career. So none of this stuff would have ever happened, is my main point. God knows what I'd be doing right now had I not discovered organics, right? So it changed my life, and it woke me up, and a light bulb went off in my head, and I got a lot of my athletes on these organics as well. And everybody always wondered why our team had such good endurance. Well, number one, we could train very hard because we grew up in the wrestling world, which is a pretty tough sport to begin with, but also our bodies were at a cellular level having so much more oxygen that we weren't we weren't running out of oxygen in our muscles, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore our muscles weren't burning sugar for energy, so we weren't building up lactic acid. So we could just go and go and go, and it was really been a cool life journey for me because of organics.
That is absolutely fascinating. So, you said it was a bunch of antioxidants at the beginning that you took, but what led you to figure out the supplement that you've created now?
I got a call several years ago from a guy that I've known for about 20 years, and he was always into the supplement world and very well versed in organics. And he called me up and he started talking to me about fulvic humic acid. And as he was explaining the benefits of it for humans, he got to the point where he said 45%, up to 45% more oxygen at a cellular level. And I said, hold on, stop, say that again. And he said 45% more oxygen at a cellular level. I said, if that's true, this is going to completely, people are going to break world records in endurance sports and combat sports. I've never heard of any number near that amount. I said, send it to me immediately, and I want to get on it immediately. So I got myself and my daughters on it right away. And about 10 days into it, at the dinner table, my oldest daughter, who was on the rowing team, one of the top rowing clubs in the world, actually, in Moline, Illinois, right across the river from us, said that she was keeping up with the number two girl in the world on her team going upriver in the Mississippi River, and asked my middle daughter if her swim practices were getting any easier. And of course, she was swimming for a guy that was a former Navy SEAL, so you can imagine what those practices are like.
Wow.
And she said, my middle daughter said, we did 100 yesterday on the clock, and I was the only girl to finish practice. And so I said, okay, I think this is definitely working. So I'm going to go run 22 miles tomorrow because it was Memorial Day. And for the 22 veterans on average that die per day,
Mm.
I figured I was going to go run 22 miles. And I hadn't run in about a year really at all. I'd been lifting weights, but not really running because I had done a lot of ultra running distance stuff. And it took so much time to go out and do a training run of 20, 30, 40 miles that I decided I was going to spend time in the weight room. So I went out. I ran 11 miles out and 11 miles back in my 50s, and thought I'm going to be really sore tomorrow. And I woke up the next day and I wasn't really sore at all. And I ran a 5 mile recovery run, and I said, okay, this is exactly what he said it is. So from there, I've shared it with a lot of people, and we've had a lot of amazing athletic stories. Guys who are in their 50s, who are my buddies that are ultra runners, who've been running marathons and ultra marathons for decades, in their 50s, drop their times, per mile times, by over a minute, and at the same time their heart rates drop by 30 beats a minute. So you just don't do that in your 50s unless you're putting something very, very potent and very effective in your body.
So that this makes so much sense because my husband, he started taking it and then he went on a hike and like a hike we've been kind of sedentary. Let's just say the last few years have been stressful, and he spent this last in the last few months ago, he spent 5 months sitting for 5 months straight doing 24-hour hospice care for his dad. So
Oh
he
yeah.
was very sedentary. And so he's been, we haven't been as active. We've probably been the least active in the last few years that we have in our lives. And he got up and he's like, this is a few days after getting on your supplement. He's like, I'm going for a walk. And he just went and he hiked up a really steep hill, and he went and he went and he went. And I thought, maybe he goes a few blocks, but he went miles. It went absolute miles. He wasn't winded. I was like, I mean, if you have been really sedentary, just sitting for years, and then you get up and you just start hiking, and he walks pretty fast. He's 6'6", so he's got
Oh
long
wow.
legs, and
Yeah.
he went and he just went and went. And he goes, yeah, I made it to Starbucks. I mean, Starbucks is miles away. And then he walked back, and then he wasn't sore the next day. He didn't even phase him. And I didn't connect the dots until just now. But that was a few days after, like maybe a week or so after he started taking your supplement. But he's been more, since he started taking it, he's been more energetic, more motivated, more active than he's been in a long time.
That's
And
amazing.
I thought that was, I mean, I'm kind of just, I'm an extrovert and I'm go, go, go. And I manage so many different things. So I'm always kind of on the move. But we've both been like organizing more, cleaning more, just being more active around the house instead of being lazy bums or like, I'm not even feeling what the first thing I noticed is, so I joined the choir and we're practicing for Christmas, and it was that particular Thursday we have a choir practice on Thursday evenings, and my mornings start pretty early. So it was a long day, and usually by like on those long days, because I'm working, I'm doing homeschooling, I'm managing a large homeschooling group, I'm shopping, I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm doing the laundry. So it's like go, 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 go. And then at 6:30, after I've made dinner, after we've, driven our son around to all of his like taekwondo class and all the other classes he does, and then I get to the church and I'm in the choir. And normally for about right around dinner time, I am done. I'm wiped. I just want to sit down. I just want to like just put me to bed. I'm done.
Right.
It's been a long day. Just let me be, right? But there I was getting ready to go to church, and I'm like, my body is telling me it's 11 a.m. It's 6:30 at night, but my body's like, do you know how you feel 11 a.m.? You're like, that's pretty much high peak energy, right? Like
Sure.
you've gotten your body's processed breakfast. You've got lots of energy. You haven't spent all your energy that day. Ever since I started taking it, my body feels like, it's not like jittery like coffee. It's not like energy like coffee tricks you into having energy.
Right.
That's not it. It's not like sugar tricks you into feeling like you're hyper or energetic before a crash. It's not that. It doesn't like necessarily feel like it's giving me energy. It just feels like it's like my body's at 11 a.m. all day long until I'm ready to go to bed. And that's what I noticed. That I just don't hit that exhaustion. I don't hit that like, oh, I need a break. I need to sit down. I need to, you know, I need something to get me through the day. I don't hit that since I started taking it. And it's not like a bunch of capsules. It was like two or three of these tiny capsules. So I'm kind of like, what's going on? Is this, I always think, is this a placebo effect, or am I, but I didn't know it would do this, because on a placebo effect, you have to have some belief it's going to do something. I didn't know what it was going to do, but I just noticed like, wow, it's 6:30 at night and I can keep going. And I just feel myself steady, even keel energy all day long until I'm ready to go to bed. And then I'm just like, okay, then I go to bed. So
Beautiful.
that's what I felt. And I thought, man, this is very interesting. I haven't tried pushing myself like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. Cause when I do go to the gym, I get like very alpha, and I push myself pretty hard when I love weightlifting. I love like grabbing those ropes and just like throwing them around until the burn hits and my muscles stop working. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when I get back in the gym. But right now I've just been kind of trying to put out fires in my life and run around. And I just noticed that I can do that with ease instead of with exhaustion. So I thought that was
Beautiful.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's due to, and I can explain, where this comes from, why it's so effective, how it works, all that sort of stuff. And so fulvic humic acids are derived from different places. Some are derived from leonardite, which is a soft coal, which is, it's fossilized. I don't want to put that in my body. They have to use harsh chemical processes to remove the humic fulvic from the coal, and then they would add pre and probiotics in it for agriculture to call it organic, so to speak. Same thing from dead seafloor beds. They'll mine it, from places like that. But the ones that I'm going to put in my body come from living, breathing peat bogs in North America. And the gentleman that discovered this searched for about 6 years, testing bogs all over North America to find the most nutrient-rich ones. Once he found that area where they were the most nutrient-rich, he knew to go down roughly about 45 feet, 45 to 50 feet to the sediment layer where all those nutrients are concentrated from 1,500 different types of plants that have basically decomposed for 60,000 years. So they're able to auger that up. They put metal tubes down into the bog, and then they auger that up, and Then they have a process that uses zero chemicals, puts it under extreme pressure, and separates the powder from the pulp. The pulp goes back in the bog to continue what's called the humification process and breaking down. So it's actually as sustainable as you're going to get. And when you add that powder in water, some people put it in their coffee in the morning. I used to drink coffee like crazy, but I drink 1 cup of coffee a day now because, yes, this product gives you so much energy. And in testing, fulvic humics are known to the organic forms of the metals will be burned by the mitochondria, which is the furnace of the cell, to create energy within the cell. And that's where you get the real energy that a human being or animal is supposed to feel when they're healthy and putting proper levels of organics in their body. So that's where the energy comes from. And it also, fulvic humics are known in tests to bond with hydrogen within the cell to create more oxygen in the cell, which is very beneficial. And then the last thing they do before they leave is they have the ability to bond with heavy metals and toxins, and then your cell recognizes those organic substances as water soluble and will then release the heavy metals and toxins attached to the organics to chelate those toxins and heavy metals out of your cells. So when you have better cellular function throughout your entire body, you're just going to feel better. And that's really one of the things that it's done. Fulvic humics are also known to be able to help balance hormonal levels, testosterone and estrogen. The organic iodine that is in fulvic humics is known to benefit thyroid function, as well as even they say protect you from radiation, which with 5G and all the other stuff that we're dealing with these days, probably not a bad thing. And so there's a lot of benefits to this, and ultimately what you want is to remove as much inflammation out of your body as possible. And with the heavy metals and toxins in our cells, a lot of the inflammation comes from those toxins being trapped within us, and that of course ends up manifesting in some form of disease many times.
Now on the website it says, and listeners to get it can go to learntruehealth.com/blackgold, learntruehealth.com/blackgold, all one word. But on the website it says one of the things it does is build your gut biome, which is the single most important thing we need. I mean, obviously we need our heart to beat, like there's certain things we need immediately.
Sure.
But for sustained health, for optimal health, we need the first thing we have to do is make sure we have a healthy gut, because the gut makes our neurotransmitters. It houses them too. It digests and makes basically makes the nutrients for us, digests. And I've done a few interviews on this where we discovered that there's over 100,000 genetic expressions of your microbiome, and they can see that what your particular gut bacteria are doing is digesting food and changing its chemical composition, and then you uptake that, and that becomes its nutrients. So we have a delicate relationship and an essential relationship with this about 6 pounds of bacteria in our gut, and it's constantly under threat because if you don't eat organic, glyphosate, for example, and all the other chemicals on conventionally grown food destroy the gut. Lots of different over-the-counter medications and prescription medications destroy the microbiome of the gut. So we're constantly under threat, and we need to support our microbiome. We need to repopulate it and support it. So anytime I see a product that works really well at helping us maintain good gut health, it's essential. It's essential for our emotional mental health as well, because there is a direct link between gut health and emotional mental health.
Sure.
And there's a direct link to our immune function, and just every cell in our body requires this delicate balance to be protected. So can you explain how your supplement helps build the gut biome?
Well, basically, what's being tested right now, and there's been several studies done on mitochondrial function, cellular function, and heavy metal toxicity removal. But the really cool thing that a lot of people are testing right now at universities here in Iowa, as well as at the University in British Columbia, is they're very interested in the specific types, families of microbes and the numbers. because when this comes up out of the ground, again, this is not fossilized, this is living. So the 60,000-year-old pristine microbes come up with it. And when it is flash frozen, those microbes are frozen in time. But when you put them back in water, they come to life like sea monkeys again. And that's the best way that I can describe it for people. And so that's what they're very interested in, because that's what's going on inside your body. And it's also when they talk about the terra preta soil. Have you heard Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan talk about the terra preta soil from Brazil at all?
No.
So very interesting. Graham Hancock's a guy that's been on my podcast several times. Super, super intelligent guy, and he studies one area of his study is history, and talking about the massive ancient civilization cities that they're finding within the Amazon jungle that date back to 8,000, 10,000 years ago. And these cities, these civilizations had a really unique composting method that created a super rich and microbial rich soil called the terra preta soil, or the Amazon black earth. And you can take a handful of that and put it down on barren soil, and his words exactly, and bring that barren soil back to life through the microbial activity and the nutrients in that soil. So this is a 60,000-year-old version of that, but even more concentrated, because it has been again 1,500 different types of plants that have decomposed for 6,000 or 60,000 years. So it's the most nutrient-rich substance that I've ever found, and I think the gentleman that discovered this actually should get a Nobel Prize for it.
That's fascinating. And they're doing studies on it right now. I mean, it would be interesting to see if it repopulates and stays in the gut, because a lot of probiotics only work as long as you take them, and they don't stay in the gut months after you have stopped taking them.
Right,
Whereas
right.
eating fermented foods, they tend to see that has a greater effect.
Sure.
So it would be, but again, this is not a prebiotic, or this is not a probiotic. This is in the sense that it's been constructed in a lab, or cultured in a lab, I should say. This has been taken from the earth. So it's different than taking a probiotic.
I've over the past 35 years have found that, to be honest with you, whatever our creator has created is always better than what's created in laboratories, from what I've found. And that's really, I mean, of course, nutraceuticals, taking organics, revving them up, doing the things that they do with them are very beneficial. But I've not seen a laboratory produce anything that has these effects on people's endurance and overall, well-being, to be honest with you.
That is fascinating. You've given us some examples of athletes who've benefited from it. Do you have stories of people, average everyday people, or even people who are sick, have some transformations where we've seen people be able to really recover from an illness because of this?
Well, I can say that, I can't make any, I don't ever make any medical claims, but I can tell you that there's been some very dramatic health turnarounds, 180s, with people who are in dire straits with their health, and it's certainly helped them a lot. And for me, again, with my respiratory system, I've tried over the past 4 years several different fulvic humics, just to see how they compare. And generally, about 10 days into using other fulvic humics, my respiratory system starts to deteriorate again, and so then I get back on my own product, and my respiratory system seems to come back. So, no, I can't make any specific, stories. I won't do that, just for obvious reasons. But I can tell you that I've had a lot of very good friends with a myriad of pretty serious health issues seem to make some pretty good recoveries.
I love it. And now I saw that one of the things you have added to it is acerola cherry powder, which is a fantastic way to get vitamin C. Why is it that you include that in with the fulvic humics
Well, the
inside
fulvic
the
humic,
capsule?
yeah, the fulvic humic is an amazing transporter of nutrients into the cell. So it's going to transport that organic vitamin C much better into the cell. So it's going to make that even more effective for immune function. And the organic vitamin C is also an incredible antioxidant. So they both work well together. And for me, I'm thinking way ahead of taking every possible antioxidant that I can find, along with the fulvic humic, and throw them in one capsule and just turn people into literally just machines.
I love it. Now, you call it Super Soldier Black Gold Oxygen Booster. Can you explain why you've decided to call your supplement that?
You know, I'm a guy who has followed a lot of the folks. I hosted a podcast for about 7 years that we dealt with a lot of the stuff that was going on in the world, kind of behind the scenes, and listening to guys like folks who are talking about digital implants in people's brains, and a lot of the things that they're talking about building digital super soldiers. China's talking about building military digital super soldiers and things like that. And I thought, in all the athletic endeavors that I've ever been involved in, and I've watched, I believe, and I know because I've seen them, I've had to wrestle them, I've had to fight them, I've run with them, that the X-Men actually do exist on this planet. And, there's people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who can run 100 miles at high altitude at the Leadville 100 without stopping. Within 24 hours, they get it done, right? And I can't explain to people who have not experienced altitude how brutally hard that is. Just to hike up one mountain is brutally hard for healthy people. I work out at a gym where people regularly carry around over 1,000 pounds on their shoulders at a strongman gym. I've had people grab me that are so unbelievably powerful that it's almost beyond, and I was a guy who was in my prime very strong. And these people, there was no comparison in strength. I mean, they threw me around like a rag doll, Olympic level wrestlers and people like that. So they do exist, and they were always people that were raised and ate whole foods, real foods from the earth, not boxed and not processed foods, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal, when I hear Dennis Bushnell from NASA saying we're going to build digital super soldiers, I said, well, I'm going to build organic super soldiers. Let's see who's better. And I know who's better.
I love it. I'm building organic super soldiers. I love it, which we all want to be. When I first heard that name, I'm like, man, I just think so many people won't relate to that this thinking super soldier, right? There's like, the mom who's at home doing homeschooling, like I'm not sure that would be relatable. But then when you explain it that way, like I want to be an organic super soldier. I want to feel, especially the experience I've had now with your product, where I'm just like, yeah, I'm go go go, and there's that no, my body just doesn't go into fatigue, and it's so cool. Our church is pretty extreme when it comes to our services are 2 hours long, and we do choir. We get there at 8 a.m. We don't leave till 1, and we're standing and singing for at least 3 hours, because we do two
Wow.
services. And I did that yesterday. I, got up, got my family ready, fed my family breakfast. We got to church, was there till 1, got home, made lunch, served lunch to the family, cleaned, did lunch, like just did all the stuff around the house, made dinner, and then had a friend over, and it was like 9 at night, and I'm like, I don't want my friend to leave. I want to just keep hanging out, but it's Sunday night, right? And I'm just like, I can't believe how just consistent my energy is, and I could get so much done consistent. And that is like organic super soldier mom level.
There you go. Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about changing people's lives. And if we can get people to just remotely eat, even remotely sensibly, right? To educate
Yes.
them on what's making them sick, what's causing inflammation in their diet, and then put proper organic nutrients into their body from the supplementation, we can literally change somebody's life so dramatically with their health that then they sit back and go, wow, what do I want to do with my life now? Now that I can actually do the things I want to do. And I've had people just break down in tears numerous times because their health had changed so dramatically by just simply changing their diet a little bit and putting proper organic nutrients into their body, supplementation, and it's really it's all I care about right now is just helping people understand that they don't have to be sick, that you can change your life. And for the past several days, about the past week, I like helping Downrange Excursions, which is a local group that helps local veterans here in the Quad Cities, Iowa, Illinois. And they take them on excursions, canoe trips, kayak trips, fishing trips, hunting trips, things like that, to get them back into the wilderness and help them cope a little bit with what they're going through. And they also have a supplement line. And so I like helping them and explain, the benefits. And as we're in these grocery stores, I'm telling you, probably 9 out of 10 people are either obese, they're sadly disfigured, their musculoskeletal system. You can tell that they're not with it mentally, and it breaks my heart to watch this happen to Americans because I've watched it for so many years because I've been involved in high level sports and nutrients and understanding this stuff, that I understand why it's happening, because they're not getting the nutrients from their food anymore because our soil's been so beat up by chemicals and things like that. So as I was sitting there yesterday and I was talking to the owner of the company, Downrange Supplements, I said to him, it's sad. It's sad to watch. And he said, yes, and that's why we're here. We're here to explain that people can change their lives. And that's what I just, the message I try to get out to people, for those people that are hurting right now, that maybe have obesity issues, that have, they're in pain, suffering from a myriad of health issues, that you can change it if you put the right things in your body and just give it a chance. That's the main thing.
We've been discussing inflammation and you brought up food. So I think this is a wonderful transition. I'd love for you to share your expertise. I mean, UFC world champion, trained world champions, trained amazing fighters, trained soldiers, trained, so many people, and helped hundreds and hundreds of people in this becoming elite athletes, becoming the best versions of themselves athletically, right? And
Right.
you can't do that and then go to McDonald's. Like, you can't do that and then just like medical doctors, it just drives me nuts when they say this. Your diet has nothing to do with your health. I have heard that so many times from doctors that, well, you can't fix this with diet. You can't fix this with food. Like, but you need a drug. It's ridiculous that it's a huge myth that you can just eat whatever you want because diabetes is genetic. So just eat whatever you want and take the insulin or take the metformin, or there's this whole mentality around maintaining sickness. And
Right.
so with that, I want to shift people's mindsets. I want to help them understand what you've been doing for so long is helping people to become the absolute best versions of themselves.
Yeah.
So what I'd love for you to just share the insight, what with the masses, tell us what the masses don't know that the elite athletes do know about what they can do on a daily basis to create optimal health.
Well, I can tell you this: if it needs a commercial and it's in a box, you generally don't want to eat it, right? And there are simple things when you're going through the organic section of the produce section where you can look for the the numbers. There's a hashtag with a 4 or 5 digit code on there that you want to stay away from the 3s and 4s when they start with 3s and 4s, and you want to go to the 8s and 9s that are truly organic. So that's something that's super important. But years ago, at one time I had between 40 and 50 world ranked fighters training in my facility at the same time. So it was a room full of very high level professional fighters. And fighters from all over the world would travel to train with my team for their upcoming fights. And it was my job to coach these guys, but it was not my job to babysit them. So I would tell them, this is where you stay, rent an apartment across the street, and then this is where the grocery store is, and this is where you can get this and take care of this. And, you're on your own. And so all the fighters from Asia, from South America, from Europe, they would go to the grocery store, and every single time, and this is over 2 decades ago, said, now we understand why Americans are obese and disease ridden. Your grocery stores are grotesque. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing but poison in your grocery stores. And they couldn't believe what they saw. And that's another light bulb that went off for me. And because I was doing things like boil on Sundays, I would boil 3 chickens and then, take the meat off and put it in big Tupperware, steam a bunch of broccoli, cook a bunch of brown rice, hard boil 48 eggs, and peel them all and have them ready for the week, things like that, and eat super clean while I was, getting ready for my own fights. And but yeah, and that was the problem is I started seeing Americans getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there was a gentleman named Dr. Ed Thomas that periodically I would be blessed by his presence and his education. And he was saying 25 years ago that it was a national security crisis that was taking place with obesity in America. And we're
Wow.
seeing that manifest now, where people who are obese and diabetic and have comorbidities are very, very vulnerable to, what's been going on the last few years. And
Yeah.
so it's got to be a terrifying experience for them. And to those folks, again, you can change your health, you can change your immune system, build your immune system, and that's super super important in modern times for certain. So that's really something that's very important, as well as kids were brought to me when I was teaching. I taught children for years, anywhere from 3 years old, all the way up. And all of a sudden, boys started to be brought to me to take lessons because the parents wanted them to be able to work on their concentration and their focus. And they had this new thing called autism. And it was growing. And back then it was 1 in 5,000 kids, I guess, roughly. And now I believe we're up to 1 in 36 children, specifically boys, that have autistic symptoms or characteristics. And so it's obviously our environment, the chemicals, and a lot of the other stuff that's going on, the toxic chemicals and heavy metals that are in our environment are getting into these children and everybody else, into our cells, and they're causing us to short circuit, so to speak. So that's really what it comes down to is just you've got to really pay attention to labels, what you're putting in your body, what chemicals you do not want to put in your body, and as well as deodorants, shampoos, things like that have you know aluminum and other substances in them that you don't want put on your skin, because your skin is going to absorb that into your system and cause hormonal disruptions and a lot of other issues.
Mm. Yeah, we've got to really really advocate for ourselves and take care of ourselves and be very cognizant of what we're putting in our body, around our body. You talked about mold. So many people live in homes with mold, and
Yeah,
mold is so bad for the immune system. It causes neurological problems. We just have to be very clear and understand what's in our environment and where our food's coming from, and we have to question everything. We have to just be the person that questions everything, that reads labels. I become a food detective. My It drives my husband nuts. I've gotten to the point where I can there's certain brands I know I can trust, so I don't read the labels, but I have still been shocked because I'll find a brand, I'll read the labels, I'll vet them, I'll go, okay, I don't buy a lot of processed foods, but there's a few things, like maybe packages of brown rice noodles for our son or something, right?
right.
And I'll read the labels, or some hot sauce. I sometimes I'll make my own hot sauce. Sometimes I buy it from the store, and I'll read the label, and everything looks good. And then I'll be buying that for a few years, and then it's sort of so habit to look at labels, and I'll read the ingredients, and they've changed it. They've changed the ingredients. Now there's all of a sudden sugar added, or some weird, natural, quote unquote, natural flavoring, which is a cover for MSG and all kinds of stuff. So we have to be diligent, and question everything. And that's why I love finding these. There's just a handful of amazing supplement companies out there that have incredibly high ethics, that are actually doing good in the world, that are making a difference for people. And it's like 1% of this, or maybe even less than 1% of the supplement
Right.
companies out there. And then there's a ton of really bad supplement companies that are giving the good ones a bad name. Just it's so unfortunate. I spent thousands of dollars and many, many years when I was sick taking, like going to Trader Joe's and just buying all the vitamins there, and they just go right through me. And I never felt a difference ever, 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 ever. I'd go to Whole Foods, buy, or wherever, whatever supplement store, and I didn't really get a difference. And then I was introduced to really high quality brand that was made by a naturopath and not sold in the stores. And I felt amazing, amazing, totally game changer for me.
Yeah.
And so there's only been a handful of game changer supplements. Yours is one of them for me.
Beautiful.
And for me, that's why it's like, you can't out supplement a bad diet. I couldn't take your supplement every day and then just eat McDonald's and expect amazing health, right? The diet absolutely is key, but even more so than diet, we have to make sure that it's clean, right? In terms of organic, right? Make sure that it's clean. We have to eat right. We need to move our body in a way that brings us joy. We have to go to bed on time, drink enough water, de-stress ourselves, make sure that we're feeling, fulfilled in life, right? So those are key to health. These are fundamental key things to health. And then there's these little things that come along that are complete game changers that take you to the next level, right? So that's what I want everyone to do, all the fundamentals. And then they get something like your supplement that oxygenates their cells, boosts their gut biome, helps their immune system. And I want to get into understanding a bit more. If you could explain further, can you explain further how this helps the immune system function better, how it fortifies the immune system, and how does it work to oxygenate the cells even better than just a regular body does it on its own?
Sure. Yeah. So the fulvic humic combination, the humic is a bigger molecule, a bigger chain, and it protects the outside of the cell. And the fulvic is what goes into the cell and will bond with hydrogen to create more oxygen within the cell. And I mean, we're water, we're oxygen, and what I like to say, good bugs and bad bugs, technically. But we're the same as dirt. If you take human cells only and clay, that's the starting point, right? And then we add water, oxygen, decomposing organic matter, and microbes, and that makes rich dirt that can grow food, and it also makes a human being. And so that's super important for people to understand. So the more you can raise your oxygen, stay hydrated with good quality water, and control the bad bugs, so to speak, to a certain extent, is super important. There have been a lot of tests done on the ability of humic and fulvic acids to have a greater affinity for viruses than viruses have affinity for the cell itself. So that's something that's very powerful. They've been proven to be very good natural, antivirals, and so that's and people can look those tests up on a myriad of different fulvic humic acids. So that's something that does exist, but that's super important for folks to understand that as well. And I've had a lot of good conversations, interesting, colorful conversations, to say the least, when you talk about doctors. I've had good conversations with doctors. I've had very interesting conversations with agronomists, horticulturalists, and I was laughed at I was probably a week and a half ago or whatever, by a chemist. I was at a digital currency meeting, and a lady that owns a CBD company was asking me about humic fulvic, and I was talking about organic forms of metal. And the guy started just laughing in my face from across the table. And then his friend started laughing at me and pointed at his friend and goes, "He's a chemist." And I was thinking to myself, I can tell. So anyway, I said, "Do I have to explain how organic metals are formed?" And he said, "Give it a shot." And so I said, when metals are chelated up out of the ground by a plant and bonded with a carbon molecule, they become very stable and useful for the mitochondria to burn as fuel to generate energy again. And he looked at me, and all he could say to me was, well, I'll agree that things can be bonded with carbon molecules. And I was thinking to myself, how much did that chemistry degree cost him? And I mean, I got punched in the head for a living and have figured this stuff out. But people have been educated only one way, and it's about synthetics. And he had the gall to ask me, he said, "Wait a minute, can this substance be synthesized?" And I said, Why would you want to do that?
Interesting.
That's the problem that's getting everybody sick is synthetics. So I go, stop it, just stop. So that was an interesting conversation.
How different is this from store-bought, let's say, humic shale and fulvic acid? I have a lot of friends who said, "Oh, well, I've been taking," and then they'll just name off some stuff they bought at some supplement store, and I'm taking a humic shale and a fulvic acid, and they don't. The reason why I ask them is because my friends know I'm like a health nut, and they'll tell me what they take, and I'll start talking about their symptoms, and then I'll say, "So is it working for you? Like, are you feeling a difference?" And, "Oh, maybe I'm getting a little better sleep," but they have like 20 other symptoms. They're still like riddled with health issues, and they're still exhausted. And I'm like, "Well, let's look at first of all, let's look at the supplement company. Let's look at, you did buy it from a store, right? And I in my experience, most supplements bought at a store are not the highest quality ones out there. Kind of some of them are middle of the road, some of them are okay, you can get away with it. But I've never met a friend who said I've totally noticed a difference. My life is completely changed when they talk about using an over the counter humic shale fulvic acid supplement. So I'm just thinking there's probably a few listeners out there say, "Oh yeah, one of my supplements I'm taking says it has humic shale and fulvic acid." So how different could yours possibly be?
Well, again, we go back to organic or inorganic sources of it. Dead seafloor
Mm,
bed or coal that has to use harsh chemical processes to remove the humic fulvic from it in the
mm,
first place is something I don't want to put in my body, and I'm certainly not going to put it in my kids' bodies. So it's got to come from an organic source. Peat bogs, living, breathing peat bogs, has got to be the first source. Now, a lot of peat bog derived humic fulvics, they will take and they will heat pasteurize and kill the microbes that are in it, which are, again, pristine microbes from thousands of years ago. And then they take pre and probiotics that have been cultured in a lab and add them back into it. And
mm.
I don't understand why you would want to do that. Now, some people say, well, we want to be able to control what type of microbes are in it and things like that. And I always say it's obvious that God created some really powerful stuff. And every time man seems to mess with what God created, they screw it up really bad. Genetically modified grains, for instance,
Oh,
synthetic fertilizers and glyphosate and everything else that was patented as an antibiotic originally. And you spray it on plants because they're sick and they can't fend off bugs because they don't give off the natural enzymes. So again, most vitamin mineral supplements, for instance, come from rock. That's inorganic. You're an organic organism. You're not going to absorb it. It's not an organic substance. So
hmm.
it's not meant to be in your body. And that's just the way it is. So you're always going to benefit and feel the organics, at least high level organics, uh, especially for sick people or people that are looking for huge gains in endurance. They're going to feel it a lot more when they put powerful concentrated organics in their body.
I'm a huge believer in trace minerals, and your supplement has over 70 trace minerals in it. There's 60 minerals the body are essential to the body, and there's many trace minerals that are necessary, and the body absolutely needs them, and yet we're deficient in them because of the farming practices of over the last 100 years. I had Dr. Wallach on my show twice, and although he has his degree is in veterinary medicine, pathology, soil agriculture, and naturopathic. He's a naturopathic physician, and he also spent many years, decades, being a research scientist. So with all that, and what he concluded with all that, because he actually discovered what is in the mainstream, which drives me nuts. We know how to prevent neurotube defects in utero because we know to take folate, not fulvic acid. That's synthetic. We talk about that synthetic versus organic. Folic acid actually blocks folate from being uptaked, and we still then can develop neurotube defects. So we've got to make sure that if you are taking a supplement during pregnancy, and also even before pregnancy when you're waiting to get pregnant, we should be making sure that it's folate, not fulvic acid, or not yeah. So we have to make sure it's folate in its organic form, and also, eating lots of leafy greens that are organic will help us get there as well. But he discovered that selenium deficiency in utero is the cause of muscular dystrophy and cystic fibrosis, and that Down syndrome is a zinc deficiency at conception, at the moment of conception. And there's many other birth defects that can happen not optimal conditions while the baby's being built. We can build humans without all the key nutrients. We're just going to build sort of broken humans, right? And that's and
Sure.
most of us are walking around like, our parents drank alcohol, and they while they were pregnant, and smoked cigarettes, and weren't taking supplements, and we're eating not so great nutrients. And this is we see poor health as a result. And so we have to overcome. And what's amazing is the body is this absolute miracle. And I've seen people on their deathbed be able to recover and live absolutely healthy lives when they're able to make some powerful changes in their diet, in their supplementation, to fill in those gaps. It's like supplements, really high quality ones, are the mortar, and the food is the bricks, right? And
Yeah.
and so we can overcome so much. But Dr. Wallach, discovered that the key thing for health, beyond anything else, are minerals that you can accidentally, he says, you can accidentally get vitamins by eating fruits and vegetables. You can accidentally get them, but it's really hard to accidentally get all minerals that we need. And
Right.
and the farming practices, and again, his background is in soil agriculture, so he saw this. He tested soil samples and found that the Amish, for example, who had incredibly high birth defect rates, that he tested their soil, because they were primarily only eating the food they grew, and he discovered that their soil was completely void of certain key minerals, and so, like selenium, and so they kept having these birth defects. And he helped them remineralize their soil and get on the trace minerals, and boom, they were able to stop those birth defects immediately. So I've seen it over and over again, and I'm a huge believer in making sure we take trace minerals as a supplement, because you don't know if the farm you're buying your organic produce from has been remineralizing their soil. And most farmland has been farmed for almost 100 years or more without remineralizing. We used to, over 100 years ago, up until energy or electricity took over. Back when we did wood burning, we had ash. We had so much ash, and that's minerals, and we'd throw it onto the garden. And so we always were eating food from remineralized gardens. And we even, if you look at cookbooks from 200 years ago, it'll say in the recipes to add potash as a thickening agent. We were adding minerals back into our food as part of a regular practice.
Very cool.
So yeah, that's like, I'm a big believer in minerals. That's one of the things that helped me to regain my health after being sick for so many years. So your supplement has these minerals, but you're saying that because they're in an organic form, it's like it was pre-digested by the plant. So the plant plants digest minerals, and they digest it to the point where we can absorb it.
Yes.
So 50 million years ago, or however long this peat bog has been there, the plants digested the minerals, and they stayed in this like chelated form, right? This very microscopic form that is easy to uptake from the body. But we've been sold. So I grew up, as you did too, grew up watching commercials on, milk, it does a body good, right? And we grew up being told that we have to drink milk to get our calcium. I kind of grew up thinking cows made calcium, right? Like a lot of people think.
And eat wheat bread.
Right. Fortified, eat fortified, and it's in synthetic. And by the way, people who have, like me, have MTHFR, he can't process non-methylated B vitamins. Eating fortified bread and fortified foods and flours is really bad for us. It clogs up our livers and makes it so we can't detox heavy metals. Like it's crazy.
Yes.
How if you go out there and eat the standard American diet, and I say this often on my show, if you want to be a statistic, do what everyone else is doing. 70% of the adult population is on at least one prescription medication. Many of them are on pain meds. People who
Right.
are chronically in pain, their bodies are in pain because they're nutrient deficient and they're just screaming in inflammation.
Right.
We've got one third of the population's obese or pre-diabetic or diabetic. The leading causes of death: heart disease, diabetes, cancer. These are not fun diseases to die of. This is like the last 20 years of your life just goes downhill worse and worse and worse and worse. And it is suffering and it is hospital visits and it is not nice. And I would rather sacrifice the fun that food brings me now. Like, I would rather not go eat fun food, right? Like, I'd rather say no to that, whatever chocolate cake, whatever it is. I'd rather say no to that and be climbing mountains in my 90s than live how everyone else is living. So I need to be the black sheep, or I need to be the salmon. I need to go completely against the grain. And I need to be okay to doing it differently from everyone else, and saying no to the things that people say yes to. But I have to really make sure I secure my minerals. So looking where we get our minerals from, because people have been brainwashed to think, well, I get all my minerals from dairy products or from fortified, wheat, fortified grains. I had Dr. Neil Barnard on my show twice, and he talks about studies that show that countries who do more dairy, cow dairy, have the highest rates of broken hips, broken legs, have the highest rates of osteopenia, osteoporosis, and those countries that almost don't do any dairy at all have the lowest rates of basically all the bone diseases, right? So very interesting that we've been brainwashed through marketing to eat fortified cereal that's laced with sugar, drink the excretions from another mammal past infancy, which is actually drinking an immune system from a different animal, which kind of just drives me nuts when you look through Neil Barnard's research and you read his books or listen to those 2 episodes. It's a real eye opener. So we've been conned through marketing, through food marketing, to create ill health. And I just wonder if there's some like real evil people in a back room somewhere. Like, you've got like big food, big agra sitting back there like menacingly with like Monsanto and the pharmaceutical industry, and they're like, "Mahaha. So we're gonna tell people that they have high cholesterol and we need to make them eat no fat, but they have to eat lots of sugar instead because low fat foods are filled with sugar. And then we're going to get them on this drug." Like, it's just the way we see how much we've been manipulated. I just wonder if they're all kind of in cahoots together. And maybe that's my little conspiracy brain going. But basically what we've been taught is the exact opposite of the truth.
Sure.
And so people are walking around completely mineral deficient, believing that they're getting their minerals because they're getting their 8 ounces of milk a day or whatever they've been told by the marketing. And they're actually not getting anywhere near what they need. So these minerals that are in your particular supplement, the 70 plus trace minerals, they've already been digested by these plants. The body uptakes them very quickly. I wonder how much though are we supposed to take, because they're very small capsules. And I was surprised. I was just taking, I think, 2 twice a day, and I got a really great result. So I'm like, man, how is it this so tiny and yet I'm getting such a good result? Like, what if I took more? Could you go through a detox if you take too much? Maybe can we just talk about that? Like, are there any adverse effects at first, or does the body go through a detox? If we take too much, can you kind of lay out what the appropriate amount to take is?
Well, for starters, again, the chelation process, and it will clean off your intestinal walls. At the smaller doses that you're taking, it's going to do it a lot slower. There are people who have, say an athlete who's pushing, the envelope every single day. The things that I used to do as an athlete, where, we would kickbox on Wednesday nights. It was sparring at the gym for all the professional fighters, and we would spar 10 to 10 to 15 rounds, and that's a lot. It's very taxing. But then we'd throw on our running shoes and go run a hill
Ooh.
over and over and over for extra, endurance. And now you got to get up the next morning and you've got to come back and you've got to train again. So you have to be able to recover and you have to put the nutrients back in the body, the hydration, proper sleep, all those sort of things. So people that are really pushing the envelope in terms of endurance and strength training and a lot of the other stuff that people like to do that look crazy to other people, they're going to definitely take more, to replenish their body. But 2 to 4 capsules a day is plenty for the average person. Generally, I've seen, I've gotten a lot of messages from people on social media who are saying this is really. I had a guy, and it's funny because I've had several guys that I know say the same thing. They go, "Hey, does this do something for your testosterone? I'm feeling like." I go, "Oh, you're chasing your wife around the house, huh?" And they go, "Yeah." And so I've gotten a lot of that, a lot of digestive issues that are being, the symptoms are waning, and a lot of other stuff with inflammation, So it just varies, I think, depending on activity. To be honest with you.
So would starting with 2 twice a day be a good place to start, or
I mean,
would you suggest?
a lot of people can take just 2 in the morning to start with if they want. That's
Hmm.
fine. But like I said, I mean, I'm a guy who's going to use a lot more because I'm trying to push my body. Today
Mm.
I tried to do a bunch of crazy stuff. I like to do workouts where I'll do 10 burpee jump pull-ups and then go run a half a mile and do that 10 times. Things like that are breaking my body down pretty good. So, I'm in my 50s, so I want to be able to come back tomorrow and, get on the treadmill and hike a bunch of miles at 10 incline to work my rear chain. And then the next day I'll do something like beat on the heavy bag and then get on the treadmill and do some sprints, just different things like that to try and keep myself at least in pretty good shape in my 50s. Not quite as intense as I used to be, but I'm going to still, push myself. And the older we get, and a lot of times the more inflammation we get as we get older because the cells build up those heavy metals and toxins, the more we're going to feel, when we put really good organics in our body and start cleaning it out.
Yes. Can you tell me more about the studies? You said some studies have been done and some studies are in the process. Is there anything more you can tell us about studies around this?
Yeah, so the mitochondrial study that was on it, done on it, it definitely improves mitochondrial function and output. So that's something that's obviously very good because a lot of people, come 1 o'clock in the afternoon are starting to drift off and wanting to fall asleep. And, a lot of times that can be thyroid related. It can be
Mm.
mitochondrial function that's deficient as well, and a lot of other things that are going on. So a lot of people that get on this, as you have said, have no desire to take a nap. They were somebody who was prone to falling asleep at 1 o'clock, and they just have energy all day long. So that's something that proves that it's obviously doing something with mitochondrial function and other things. But the heavy metal toxicity, showing people the levels of the heavy metals have dropped considerably in their bodies, even from their hair follicles. So that's something that's really big. There's a lady who owns a farm on an island off of in Canada near Vancouver, and she got on the product and she had blood work done of her metal toxicity before and after, and it was very dramatic decrease in the heavy metals in her system. And likewise, there's been a lot of people who've gotten the same results.
That's really interesting. That was actually my next question. If you could share blood work, have you guys done blood work with a section of people, or what are the results that people see are changed after 3 or 6 months on this supplement when they compare blood work?
Well, some people who have been very sick with really high white blood cell, red blood cell deficiencies, and a lot of those types of things, and chemicals, the 14 chemicals that they test for generally in regular blood work, will be, really out of whack. And then, after being on the product for a while, their white blood cell counts and their red blood cell counts go back into the normal range many times, and the different chemicals within the body go back into the normal range quite a bit as well. So that's something that that's empirical. It's data that's super important for people to understand that there have been a lot of people who have, yes, gotten blood work. And one of the farmers that I've been working with, I've done some speeches at some ag gatherings, like I said, and in talking to farmers, because they've been exposed to so many harsh chemicals, many times their health is pretty bad. And I remember my grandma and grandpa on both sides of the family having, Parkinson's disease from using chemicals on the farm and things like that. And so we got to get that stuff out of them. And so when I talk to them about their own health and talk to them about fulvic humics, because fulvic humics, and they're called humic fulvics in agriculture, are used quite a bit by a lot of farmers to help with yields, to help with soil health and plant health as well. Mm-hmm. And so when I talk to them about their health and I get them on the human form of this product, the super soldier, and their health greatly improves, then they tend to perk up and listen to me, because I ask them about their humic fulvic that's derived from coal, and I say, would you put that in your body? And they say, absolutely not. And I said, so now we're starting to talk about the difference in the quality of and where it's derived from is super important. And that's when they start to listen to me a little bit. And I've got one friend who's probably one of the most knowledgeable farmers in the country in terms of mixing conventional and organic products to do biological farming. And his pants are literally falling off him right now. He's lost so much weight, and his health has improved greatly. His wife's health has improved greatly. And that's been something that it's my pathway, my vehicle to getting through to farmers and helping them understand how we can change not only their health, but the quality of their crops.
And I met you through Tim James, and I've had him on my show, and I've been on his show, and that's his passion too. I'm sure you guys have talked about that. That's his passion, to help farmers to, first of all, just educate them so that they'll stop using these horrible chemicals that are killing their families and killing the land, and destroying the earth. Maybe they'll get a higher yield for a while by doing GMO and glyphosate or whatever the horrible chemicals are. But what are we're sacrificing the long term for the short gain. And
Yes.
that's just, it's, when we have barren lands that are unusable, what's the point? What we thought in the old days, we thought that you could just, that soil was dead, that it's inert, that it's not organic. And now we've discovered that farming and the soil is as complex as our own microbiome in our body, that,
Sure.
it's kind of like so above, so below, right? Like as on earth as it in heaven, as in the soil, as it is in our body, as in nature, as it is in our body. We can see the similarities between the microbiome of soil and the microbiome of our gut, and that we need to maintain a healthy soil to maintain a healthy body. And by them putting these chemicals on that glyphosate being a chelator, but it's also a an antibiotic. So it's destroying the microbiome of our gut and of the soil, just killing the soil dead. And then on top of that, it chelates heavy metals to the brain and the kidneys, depositing them into the brain and kidneys. And I have 2 interviews on that with Stephanie Seneff, PhD, top research scientist at MIT, who explains that what we're seeing is just an epidemic of heavy metals being deposited into the brain and the kidneys, because glyphosate is rampant, and now it's in our waters. Now
Oh
it's
yeah.
not only in our soil, it's in our waters. It's
Or
in
rain, everything.
it's it's everywhere. And it's just so high. The cancer rates are just going up and up and up. And if we look at the health of in the farming areas, if we look, for example, the United States, but we could look at any country, the areas where they spray, right? And I was woken up when I was first pregnant 8 years ago. My midwife, who's also an naturopathic physician, who used to be the dean of Bastyr, incredibly knowledgeable woman, been practicing for over 30 years, delivered over 1,000 babies. She said to me, it's good that you don't live on the other side of the mountains in Eastern Washington, because during the times, if you're pregnant in the time, I think it's spring or something, if you're pregnant, if you're in the first trimester or whatever, there's a certain very vulnerable time of a pregnancy. If it coincides with the farming schedule, you will likely lose your baby. Just by living in an area, because they do the spraying, you inhale the fumes from miles down the road, you inhale what is being sprayed, and you will lose your baby. And this happens across the world. So we have to, we really, really need to wake up that our farmers are a line of first defense, that if they change, if we need to support them in changing their ways, because it's going to trickle downstream, and then we're all messed up. And these chemicals are just, it is short term possible short-term gain, but to long-term detriment, and it's in long-term in our lifetime. So I love what you're doing. I love that you're supporting the farmers and helping them. I want to say wake them up, but they're just doing the best they can. They're scraping by. They can barely make a profit.
Yeah, they're getting
And
beat up right now. It's
they're
pretty bad. And
yeah.
that's the scary thing is, so I was talking to a friend of mine who's a very good friend of mine who's an advisor. He's a professor of biology at one of the universities here in the state of Iowa. And I asked him, I said, this is a question that I have been pondering quite a bit lately, for a lot of years, actually, a couple decades, because in the state of Iowa, and I know around the Midwest, they will, when they're going to build a development or an office park or whatever, they bring in earth scrapers and they scrape off all the topsoil, and they put it in massive piles, and then they'll go back out, and I think they're required to put 4 inches back down. So they're scraping off all the living soil, and then there's clay, and then they put a few inches of black dirt back down, which is not going to hold the water. The water's going to run off into streams, into rivers, and away from the area. And so there's not proper, and I said, you tell me if I'm correct in my assumption, that now we do not have proper evaporation rates, and therefore we're seeing droughts around the country in a big way right now. And he said, yes, you're correct. And also by putting synthetics on farm fields and on golf courses and our own yards and everything else, we're all part of the problem, is that we are creating dead soil that does not hold water, and it's running off. And we are creating, the Mississippi River is at the lowest I think it's ever been. There's rivers around the world that are starting to run dry right now because of this. And so we've got to stop it. We really have to stop it, and we've got to change our ways, because it seems like humans are so easily, whether miseducated or I guess programmed, so to speak, for better lack of term, to literally extinct ourselves. I mean, that's what's happening, and people have got to wake up and understand that we're doing this to ourselves, and this is where we talk about the free will. For those that believe in a creator, he gave us free will, and everything, every calamity, every genocide, every war has always been free will, but it always seems to be an atmosphere that has been created by folks that run this planet, and somehow humans end up not seeing through it and turning on each other and even turning on ourselves.
Yeah.
So, that's all I ask, is that people take a step back and realize that, yes, you've got to be the change that you want in the world. You've got to change your own health. And then people start asking you, what are you doing? And then you can teach them. And, that's really important, where you talk about, the old saying, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. It really is that simple.
Yes. And we need to start questioning everything and go, stop and go, what I'm doing now is not working. If I am not happy with my health, it's not working. Not to throw it all out. Maybe some of it's half working, but we need to be able to question our own belief system.
Right.
And questioning, like, we need to stop and go, the farming practices are not working. The evaporation rates around the world are causing droughts around the world. This is not working. We need to stop. We need to go back to a farming practice that is sustainable, that is healthy for humans and for the planet. And because what's healthy for the planet is healthy for humans. Let's go back to how we used to do it 100 years ago, right? Where we cared about topsoil, where we didn't dig deep into the earth and remove the layers that have the wonderful microbiome in there. So I love the work that you're doing, and understanding more about healthy agriculture allows us to understand more about how we can create a healthy body. So there is that direct correlation.
Yeah.
I want to know, though, I've heard this a lot, that people are afraid to take trace minerals because of heavy metals. I've even heard naturopaths say, oh, I don't give trace minerals to my patients because I'm worried that those trace minerals are going to be full of heavy metals and that this is actually toxic and fulvic acid's actually toxic. Now, of course, we've talked about this, that, the stuff that comes from coal, yes, I can understand that. But can you please explain how your supplement does not contain these heavy metals that are dangerous to the body?
Yeah, so I mean, anybody that has done even a little bit of investigation, and again, this is where people are miseducated. So chemists, doctors, agronomists, having a chemist, a high level chemist, tell me there's no such thing as organic forms of metal, and laughing at me, and he stopped laughing as soon as I educated him on how metals are converted to organic, right, to be bonded with carbon. So there are drastic differences. Heavy metals are very bad for you. When you have heavy metals such as aluminum and lead trapped in your cells, they're very toxic. They will cause you health problems, period, end of story. But when those same exact metals have been chelated out of the ground by a plant and bonded with a carbon molecule, they now can be used again as fuel by your mitochondria. So there's a huge difference. And trust me, after 35 years of research, I would not put this stuff in my children's bodies. And people have to understand, I just got done giving a speech, I don't know, a month ago to the school board here in Bettendorf, Iowa. We've been having a lot of problems here in Bettendorf, Iowa with the education system, the behavioral issues, a lot of other things. And we've got 5 of 7 school board members and a superintendent who are, it's impossible to explain the insanity that I've witnessed when I go and I listen to these people talk. So I went and I said, I'm not going to get into the division that's been falsely created and by design. I'm not going to argue with you guys. I'm not going to get into politics. I'm absolutely done with politics. But I'm going to tell you flat out that our children are being systematically poisoned by the food, the water. I talked about the 22 chemicals in our local water. One of them being atrazine, that not only converts the testosterone and estrogen levels of frogs in the wild from runoff and of lab rats, not only destroys their hormonal levels of testosterone and estrogen, but male frogs and male rats actually grow female genitalia. This stuff is so powerful. And I said,
Yes.
this is what's happening to our children. Our boys are being destroyed. Our girls are being destroyed. Their hormonal levels are out of whack. They have no clue how they're supposed to feel. And then they're told by you guys that it's perfectly okay to feel the way you feel, dress the way you want to dress. And it's wrong, because eventually these kids are going to end up under the knife of some Dr. Frankenstein. And this goes against all laws of nature. Even if you don't believe in a creator, it goes against all laws of nature. And it's horrible. It is the mutilization of and destruction of an entire generation of children. And that's got to stop. And I told them flat out, my children have never had a serious illness. When a lot of other kids are getting strep throat, flus, pneumonias, bronchitis, everything else, my kids have never experienced that, because I make sure to put powerful organics in their bodies, and they are constantly cleaned out, and they are healthy as they can be. And so that's what I want to try and get through to people, is that we have to save our kids, and we've got to save our planet for those kids, because are we going to leave them a toxic synthetic world that's going to just destroy them? No, we can't do that.
You talk about atrazine. I just recently shared a video with a scientist and his team of scientists about atrazine, and they were going, this one area of California has the highest levels of atrazine than across America. And they were going to testing the water supply, the runoff, and the streams near the farms. Incredibly high levels of atrazine, and they were collecting the frogs and studying them. And the head scientist was showing that, look, this frog is a genetic male, and he has both genitalia, and they were showing that there were 2 frogs that were both genetically male, and they were able to mate and reproduce. And he was explaining it, very fascinating. He goes, this is horrifying for the health effects of humans because it is an endocrine disruptor. I
Yeah.
think if we take the politics out, and I support children and families, I want them to be the healthiest they can be. And if there's something that's hidden in their water supply that they're drinking, they're trusting their tap water. And I don't even know if atrazine's been removed when you pour it through a Brita filter or whatever filter you're using that you think, removes chemicals. Maybe it's not being removed. Maybe because there's certain filters that can't remove everything. Even
Right.
the Berkey can't remove nitrites. So there's certain compounds that are so small they can get through a lot of filters, unless of course it's like reverse osmosis or there's a few ones that can remove everything, but they're also removing the trace minerals. So the thing is, people are going around trusting their water supply. They're getting atrazine in their body. It's an endocrine disruptor. Whether that then, as a child that's growing up, all of a sudden now they're not having the appropriate amounts of hormones, which is disrupting them and making them feel very weird. I'd feel very weird if my hormones were being disrupted, or like when women get put on birth control, it makes you feel different. It absolutely makes you feel different. But not only that, and I agree with what you're saying, that we need to be very cautious for our children. And it's in our food. The atrazine's in our food. It's now hidden in our water because it's runoff. All these chemicals.
Right.
But as an endocrine disruptor while you are maturing, but also past maturity, that is going to cause cancer. That is going to cause other diseases. We see this. That anything that's an endocrine disruptor affects. So we might see on the outside it's affecting hugely the reproductive system and the testosterone and all the estrogens, but then it trickles down and it affects, because all the hormonal systems all in this crazy balance. So you're throwing this out of balance. And then we see down the road increase in childhood cancers,
Right.
increase in ADD or ADHD now, because it's just disrupting how we function, how our brain functions, how we learn. And you're affecting the child's future, everything. You're affecting fertility. So we need to come back and take control. We need to come back and go, okay, I need clean water. I need clean food. I need clean water and clean food into my families at all times. At all times, I need to make sure that we're getting good, clean food that's healthy, and then I need to make sure I'm filling in those gaps, like mortar. Bricks are food, the mortar's the supplements, and making sure I'm getting all the minerals I need to optimize our health. But I appreciate that you've brought up atrazine, because that's something I haven't covered on the show specifically. We've covered other chemicals, but that specifically is so important. We're seeing girls getting their period younger and younger and younger. We're seeing like 8-year-olds growing breasts, and it used to be, like maybe grade 8, grade 9 that this would happen. Now it's in middle school. Right now,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is just
And
so
it's
something's
funny.
changed.
It's funny, but it's not funny. But somebody as crazy as Alex Jones talked about it, but he framed it completely wrong because he's such a theatrical lunatic that he would scream, "They're turning the frogs gay," and he was correct in what was happening to the frogs and the lab rats, that they were being destroyed, with their hormone levels, but he wasn't explaining it scientifically what was happening to them and what's happening to our children, that our children are being destroyed. And this is something it's gotta, yeah, we've got to wake people up, and we've got to help them educate themselves. And that's what's frustrating about an education system that is basically almost an accomplice to the crimes that are being committed against our children, because they're not educating the family, they're not educating the children about what's happening to them, to their bodies, to their minds, to everything else that's going on, and instead are just saying it's okay, it's perfectly normal, it's perfectly normal that you're being poisoned. And so that's where we've really got to change things. And again, that's the whole thing is, I don't care one way or another what people do with their lives, but we've got to have them healthy physically and mentally for them to make the decisions of what they want to do with their lives. If they're sick mentally and physically and are so confused that they don't know how they feel, they're not making educated decisions for their own lives at all.
Well, it's like this. What if atrazine caused diabetes, right, and obesity? Let's just say that it's an endocrine disruptor. Let's just say it caused that, and the school board said, it's perfectly normal to be incredibly sick and have diabetes. It's perfectly normal, and we're gonna just support this, and we're gonna feed you lots of sugar. We're gonna fill you up with chemical processed crap. We're not gonna feed you any healthy food. We're gonna cut out recess. We're gonna decrease PE. We're just do everything to support your unhealthy habit lifestyle, right? And to make sure that you continue to have it. um that is not in any way in the child's best interest, right? What's in the child's best interest is we're going to give you a healthy diet. We're going to support you in reversing type 2 diabetes and increasing insulin sensitivity. We're going to give you more recess time. We're going to let you run around and be a kid and be as healthy as possible. And we're going to make sure your food's clean, your water's clean, your air's clean. We're going to put you in buildings that don't have mold, that don't have toxic off gassing. We're going to just do the best we can to give you a healthy environment. And if a child, whatever child that child decides to grow up to be, fantastic, because they've been given a healthy body and a clean and healthy environment. That's what I want for them. That's what I want. But they don't have that right now. And the system is designed, the whole system is designed to keep people sick. So that's why we have to take matters into our own hands. We have to get the right supplements. We have to get the clean food. We have to be the advocates for ourselves. We cannot leave our health up to any system, especially a government system. There's my soapbox. And that's probably why I do homeschooling, because I have a strong distrust of these large systems that I don't feel are out for my child's best interest. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing what you've shared. I'm again in awe of your product. And of course, listeners can go to learntruehealth.com/blackgold. Check it out. Try it for yourself. See how you like it. Do what my husband did. Take it for a few days, take it for a week, and then go on a massive hike and see what happens. Or just do like me and be like a crazy mom with her head cut off and run around and do a million things like all moms do, run around all day, and just notice that you don't have to live off of energy drinks and Starbucks. Like I don't. I just feel amazing. There's days I don't do coffee all the time. I don't, and if I do, it's one little coffee, but I don't do it all the time. I just feel great.
There you
And of
go.
course
Yeah.
I'm doing the foundation stuff. And I just think it's so important that we look to everywhere. We don't just do one thing, we look to all the things. But there's so many listeners who want to take their health to the next level. And maybe it's this one thing where it's these really powerful, probiotics from the earth and trace minerals from the earth to bring their health to the next level. I love that it fortifies the immune system and it helps oxygenate all the cells, even more so. It helps the body remove heavy metals. That's you've checked every box on my list. So the fact that it helps the mitochondria, I'm thinking about people with MS and people with mitochondrial disease and how this could help them. It's very exciting. People with diabetes, with cardiovascular issues, because it helps the cardiovascular system. So I think there's so many people who are sick could benefit from this, in addition to doing all the other good things that are important for our health. Yeah, learntruehealth.com/black gold. And is there anything you'd like to say to the listener who's struggling with health and just learning about all these changes they can make to get on the other side, and just overcome what they're facing? Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
I can just tell you that I can relate to severe health issues because I suffered as a kid for my entire childhood, again, into my early 20s, and to experience a life-changing event, putting organics in my body and being able to accomplish the things that I have and change. It was ultimately about changing other people's lives, not just mine, what I was capable of then to help everybody from little kids learn how to defend themselves and learn discipline, all the way up to, adults that just wanted to stay in shape and learn self-defense, to professional athletes, to military law enforcement. And, you can change your life. You really can. And just take that step. It's not scary. It's an amazing adventure. And when you can wake up one day and go, wow, I really can now dream of things that I want to do with my life. And that's what we want to give you.
I love it. Thank you so much, Pat, for coming on the show. Please come back when you've got the rest of those studies done. I want to
Absolutely.
hear it. I want to hear all the science that you guys discover as these studies continue.
Okay, you got it. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.